male reproductive success is commonly more variable than female reproductive success. Isn't invariably true, and we'll see some cases of where it's not true in just a second. But one of the things that we did was we traced back that observation to essentially the fact that male gametes are so much smaller and easier and cheaper to produce than female gametes. And as a consequence, the sort of overall maximum potential reproduction by males can be bigger. But because everybody has to have one mom and one dad, the only way you can do that is have the increasing variance in male reproductive success than female, compared to female reproductive success. So, number one, kind of a really important true thing here. Second thing is that we, noted that if you have competition among individuals of one sex for mates, okay, that the sort of the degree of competition, the intensity of the competition, is going to be directly proportional to the variance in the reproductive success. So the greater the variance in reproductive success in males, the greater the degree of competition there will be for males to achieve that highest reproductive success. If there's less variance, there's less competition. There might still be competition, but be less competition. Okay. With that competition, this commonly selects for traits that make them successful in competition. Those that win the competition are, possess traits that allow them to be the winners. Bigger size, greater aggression, larger weapon, and so on. And of course this, does require the sort of standard elements for natural selection to occur at all. Size has to be a trait that is inherited. Okay. Then those that are bigger will have offspring that are bigger, or antler size has to be a heritable trait. Then those that are successful at reproducing will have offspring that have higher antler sizes. That's the mechanism for competition among mates, or competition for mates. And anyway, this is kind of a point that will linger around here, is that those traits that are actually good at providing sort of success in competition for mates may actually have a cost associated with them. Like increased cost of very sort of actively defending or competing. That might mean that you lose energy for other things, for survival. Increased development of weaponry might come at the cost of other sorts of things, like the examples we showed were testis size. They have big antlers, small testes. Large levels of testosterone. We'll see maybe in a week that testosterone is a substance that actually causes a lot of problems for males in terms of their immune function, for example. Okay. We want to kind of expand this a little bit and make it some more, add a little bit of generality here. This was the thing that we showed last time, the Ruskin Newt, where the idea is that for males in these newts, the more opportunities they have to mate, the greater number of mates that they have, the greater the number of offspring that they produce, the greater the reproductive success. And that's true for the males, but not for the females in these newts. Okay. Now, this doesn't invariably have to be true especially if the males are providing some sort of a valuable resource that is limited in the same way that if the availability of males greatly outweighs the availability of females, females are the limiting resource to males. But things like these pipefish, situations can be reversed. Pipefish are, have you heard about pipefish? They're one of these situations where the female lays eggs in a brooding pouch of the males. So the males get pregnant. Okay. And they're close relatives of seahorses. If you just kind of like sort of bend this thing around and swirl it around a little bit, it turns into a seahorse, basically. And seahorses do the same thing too. Females, have a modified fin that they insert into the sort of brood pouch opening of a male, and they lay the eggs in there. And the males have to gestate those eggs. There is a sort of a limited amount of space that males have, in their brood pouch. Okay, so there's potentially a limitation to the sort of success of female pipefish due to the limited space available for male brood pouch space, I guess, limited space in the brood pouch. Okay. So they did the same sort of experiment that they do with the newts on the pipefish. It's not nearly as dramatic, but it does show this sort of a response. So here's males, the dotted line. They have 1, 2, or 3 females, and their reproductive success goes up with the number of females. But if you actually do this for females, the female reproductive success goes up even more than that than for males. The difference here is the slope. So the male slope is 15, and the female slope is like 26. Okay. So the effect of additional mates is greater for females than it is for males. Okay, so you have this sort of reversal of this sort of a pattern, where the rate of increase for males is greater than the rate of increase for females with additional mates. What does that do? There's a really interesting study here on this fish called the two-spotted goby. Two-spotted goby in coastal European waters. And this is a male, it's like brightly colored, just a female. What happens? So these fish, they kind of hatch out in 1 year, and then they kind of live through into the next year, and then they reproduce and die. So they live for a year. Okay. The male fish, male gobies, as is actually pretty common in fish, take care of the eggs. They build nests. Females, perhaps more than one female, lay their eggs in the nests of the males. Okay. The males take care of them. Okay. Take care of them. What do they have to do? They protect them from being eaten by things. These are small fish, so there's sort of a limit to what they can do. But they probably protect them from being eaten by other gobies, other two-spotted gobies. And they fan the eggs, keep them, fresh oxygen with water, and so on. They start breeding in May, and they end up breeding. The last of them are breeding in July. Okay. This is introducing a really important concept here. This is called the operational sex ratio. The operational sex ratio, and this doesn't have to do with just the total number of males and the total number of females. It has to do with on this particular day, at this particular time, who is actually willing to mate right now. Okay. And you're looking at the males compared to the females. In May, the operational sex ratio is heavily male biased. There's 80% or more, I don't know what that is, 80-something% of the individuals who are willing to mate right now are males. You know, so there's like 4 or more to 1 ratio of reproductively interested males to reproductively interested females. Because the season goes on and the males are doing these active things like protecting their nests and they're protecting their family, caring for the young, they actually wear out and they die off more quickly or sooner. And the operational sex ratio by July completely flips. Now, at the beginning of July, 90% of the individuals who are willing to mate at a particular moment are likely to be females. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of the number of females who want to mate compared to the number of males, 9-to-1, something like that. Okay? So it really switches around. The operational sex ratio. You see that? See what we're talking about here? And this actually changes the behavior of the male and female fish. So here is the level of agonistic behavior. These are sort of conflicts. The males are overweight abundant compared to females. There's a lot of conflict among males. They are fighting with each other, trying to get access to females, competing actively. By the end of the season, they're not doing that. You know, only a few percent of the interactions that you see between males are sort of agonistic, these aggressive interactions. It drops off dramatically. At the same time, there's a shift as females become more and more. They start out as the limiting sex and become the limited sex, limited by the availability of males who are providing this important resource of a nest where the females can lay eggs. There's no real, later in May, 0 observations of female-female aggression, and female-female aggression maximizes out at sort of the end of the year as they become far more frequent than the males. So the females are competing with one another for access to this limiting resource of nests. Early on, the males are competing with one another for access to this limiting resource of number of available females. Courtship follows the same sort of pattern. Early on, males are courting heavily, and they stop courting as you get later and later in the season. Females don't court to begin the breeding season, but by the end of the season, they're actively courting males. Okay. This is, it's kind of what you would expect. As there is one sex that is limiting and the other sex limited, the limited sex has to compete for access to the other sex. And this often happens, among males as the limited sex. But it can change depending on sort of conditions, like the pipefish, where males brood pouch size is always limiting. Or, as you see in the case of these gobies, where according to the time of the year, differential survival changes the balance between males and females. It changes the behavior. Okay? Does that make some sense? So, today is Thursday. Sorry. Everybody got one? A, B, C, or D? Or your name, of course.
Is this an opinion?
What do you think? No, you don't need to say why. I don't care why you think it. Let me put it that way. But I also want you to make a decision and hand in the things quickly here. You don't get 5 minutes. This is like a 30-second start to finish. An exception will be granted. All right, that's Thank you. Thank you. Come on, guys. This isn't hard. Oh, I can go over here and keep it. Okay. Who said A? That's an ibex. B. Sable antelope. C. How would you make C? I like C. That's the scimitar horned oryx. D. Adax. Okay. Cool. We have mostly talked about, conflict, largely among males, male-male competition, happening before mating occurs. Males are fighting about things, and then they, and then somebody gets to mate and somebody doesn't get to mate. Male-male competition does not have to stop after mating occurs. And this is true if the females mate more than a single time. If the female mates a single time, and there are lots of organisms where female mates once, there can be a large amount of competition among males to feed that male that the female mates with. Okay, but once the female's mated, she's not going to mate again, so the competition's over. But if the female mates more than one time, that competition among males may continue after copulation. Consider the damselfly. This is the black-winged damselfly. Females mate more than once. Damselflies have an intromittent organ, penis, basically, that they insert into the female. In insects, that's called an ediogus. And this is what it looks like. A black-winged damselfly. It's a scary organ here because it's sort of sharp and barbed in these males. And the purpose of these barbs is to remove the sperm that has been deposited by any potential earlier male that mated with the female. Okay. So if you are the second male to mate, it doesn't mean that you can't fertilize all of that female's eggs, because the male may be able to sort of remove all the sperm. This is a panel showing the sort of genitalia of a whole bunch of different species of damselflies. And the Edieguses of the males are the stippled area, which doesn't show up really very. But you can see there's a tremendous amount of variability amongst species, or among males of different species of damselflies. Okay, this is actually often one of the major ways that you can tell species apart in insects is by looking at the form of their genitalia. Because and why do they have this sort of abundantly unusual form? It's because of the fact that there can be a tremendous amount of competition among males to do things, to, remove sperm, or to interfere with, or repackage it somehow and shove it off to the side, sperm of males that previously mated with that female. So this is only going to happen really when the female mates more than a single time. That's not the only thing that can happen. There can be these morphological changes where there's a sort of arms race among males to achieve this capacity to remove the sperm of previous males, and the females to maybe sort of try to avoid that male behavior. But other things can happen after mating. We'll talk about that first thing in next, but there's other things that can happen. There might be selection on males to increase the number of sperm that they produce. So sperm quantity. If the second male can just swamp out the sperm of the first male, he might win in the competition among males for access to females. This is something that's generically called sperm competition. And it's part of this male-male competition for, mating. Males could produce sperm with extremely long tails. This is known to happen where the sperm might be longer than the body of the insect. And those long-tailed sperm basically just kind of get in the way, and they interfere with, sperm that might actually come in behind. So it's a way for the leading male to actually succeed in this sperm competition, this male-male competition. Or some males produce killer sperm, where they don't really, the point is not to actually fertilize eggs, but it's to kill other sperm. Or sperm might bundle together in a cooperative group, and this bundled together batch of sperm moves more quickly. Okay? Just moving more quickly is an advantage too. So you have selection to have sperm speed, increase, because they get there first. Okay? So sperm competition is another way of having this sort of competition among males. Now, like I said, these sort of genital traits, because they're involved in mating and involved in this, selection for mechanisms to ensure that your sperm mate with, fertilize this female's eggs, or mechanisms that a female might evolve to try to avoid that sort of tactic. Genitalia tend to evolve more quickly than other parts of the body. These are a bunch of insects, butterflies, butterflies, beetles, and you're looking at genital traits and other traits, like, I don't know, eyes or legs or wings or something like that are not really involved in reading. These ratios are the ratio of how rapidly evolution is taking place in a species that mates 2 or more times, when a female mates 2 or more times, compared to when a female mates a single time. Okay.
Can you, how fast evolution takes place?
Yeah.
Depending on how much female is.
Right, and it's the ratio of, so like this 17.6 at the top. That means that the rate of evolution of this sort of group pair of species in the hierarchy, which is kind of butterfly, is more rapid in that species that makes twice. It's 17.6 times more rapid than in the species that mates a single time. So evolution is happening more quickly when you have greater amounts of mating by females compared. And all of these ratios, not all of them, but pretty much all of them are greater than 1. And on average, they're 2.9. So on average, the rate of evolution in genital traits for species that mate twice compared to once is twice as great.
What are they all being compared to?
They're being compared with a closely related species that mates a single.
Okay.
So those ratios are what that comparison is. This means that if you look at a hyarid species, whatever the species is, that mates a single time, it evolves at a certain rate. But if you look at the ones that mate twice or more, it's evolving 17 times faster. Okay. And that's really different from just other body traits, eyes, antennae, legs, whatever, for these insects. They more or less evolve at the same rate, whether, regardless of whether the female mates 1 time or 2 times. This is not, this is highly significantly greater than that. So these things evolve very rapidly. And it's let's think about sperm production. Okay, and how sperm production might interact with, how mating occurs. These are birds. It's, I don't know, not all birds, but a big chunk of birds, hundreds, maybe thousands of species on this picture. And it's looking at body mass on a log scale, so from, 3-5 gram hummingbird up to a, 30,000 gram ostrich or something like that. Body mass and test mass. Not surprising. Huh? No, I'm saying that's a hummingbird.
No, yeah, but like this is not like all hummingbirds.
No, this is like all hummingbirds be down here. They don't weigh more than 4 grams.
So they're
Something
all
that's
different.
10,000 grams.
Each dog is a different species.
Precise.
Okay.
So you've got ostriches, hummingbirds, and crows down here that weigh 100 grams or 500 grams. So it's all birds. Yeah.
I'd like to confirm, please. So you mentioned that in general, genitalia tend to evolve more quickly than other body parts.
Yes.
Evolve or develop?
Evolve.
Evolve.
But this is true when the females mate more than once. It's not true when they just mate a single time. Because the reason that they're evolving is because the males are doing things to try to, doing things with their genitalia to try to make them the male that is successful at mating. And the females are doing things with their genitalia to resist that evolution of the males. Okay. So, now, bigger birds have bigger testes. That's not surprising. But you can also see that there's a lot of variability. So there's some birds that are relatively big, not 1,000 grams, but hidden there, that have different sizes testes than other birds that are basically the same size and might have testes that are 100 times bigger, 1,000 times bigger. Okay. What's going on here? it turns out that if you look at the size, larger than expected testes or smaller than expected testes, it depends on the kind of mating system that the organisms have. So those species that are monogamous, those species that are monogamous, that's what the MON means. So there's a single male and a single female. They tend to have, on average, smaller testes than those males that are, let's say, polygynous, where one male has multiple female partners. There's a lot more competition among the males for fertilizing those female partners when they're polygynous compared to monogamous. This number here is smaller than that number here. This number here is smaller than that number there, for example. Okay. The males that participate in parental care, in this case it's incubation, and have smaller testes, and those species, the males, do not participate in incubation. If they're not incubating the eggs, what are they likely to be doing? Mating. Look at their mates. Okay? The competition, basically among the males, has been kind of established by the time they form a pair in these monogamous species. Okay? And there's now a tremendous need to have extra production of sperm. If they're not monogamous, they're probably trying to find other mates. They're also probably not participating in as much in parental care. That's kind of a sort of a crude way of thinking about how sperm competition works. Another possibility for how males might actually compete for where the competition among males might extend beyond mating is having to do with the guarding of mates by males. So these are bank swallows. Bank swallows, they live in banks. Okay, big high stream banks usually where they're dirt that they dig a sort of a tunnel into, and the nest is inside this tunnel. And you can see those nests are really very close proximity to each other. So inside each one of those holes goes back and there's a nest in it. This is looking at the behavior of males in terms of how they're chasing individuals. Okay. Males are commonly chasing females. Okay. And the blue line is the males chasing a female who's not their mate. Okay. And they're chasing these females in order to copulate with those females. Okay. Not surprisingly, when they're not chasing the females that they are paired with until the interval when mating can actually result in the fertilization of the eggs. Okay. After the eggs have all been laid, of course, there's no point in actually paying attention to the females, to your own female. And before the egg gets to a certain critical size, there's no point in paying close attention to the female that you're paired with. Okay? It's only in the time when the eggs are ready to be laid, and you're in the process of laying them, that the male chases their own mate, and they're chasing it into the burrows. Okay? To try to defend those females from, attempted mating by other males. And you can see that that's actually appropriate because everybody else, this male is doing the same thing. When he doesn't have to worry somebody, he's chasing other females. After that period of time when fertilization can take place, so now we're no longer involved in males guarding the females. He resumes his chasing of other females. Okay, now,
So when do they chase when do they chase their mates?
it's the red one here. It's right at the time when eggs are, it's before eggs are laid, because that's when fertilization has to happen, at least for the first one. You know, and then those eggs are laid over a period of time. And after, basically, the eggshell is laid down for that last egg, he doesn't care anymore. There's no more chance that somebody else is gonna fertilize that female.
Okay, so then that's when, after she fertilizes, like, she can't get fertilized again.
He stops. Then he stops chasing her into the brood.
And he chases others?
He chases other females. Yeah, exactly. Make sense? Wolves.
But he does not now leave her. Indeed, he couldn't even if he wanted to. His genitals have swollen so greatly inside her that the pair are locked together. And this is no unfortunate accident. It's an important part of the male's breeding strategy. Remaining tied for so long gives his sperm time to reach her eggs before a competitor can displace him. It may be half an hour or so before they're able to pull apart. The aftermath of such a genital lock may be slightly painful, but the process has virtually guaranteed him his paternity. And animals that don't take such precautions can't be nearly so certain.
So, I mean, the genital locking is something that is sort of like, it happens in dogs, in the canine. But it's kind of like, you know, and, but it's a particular adaptation that does the same thing as mate guarding in the barn swallows, right? It's not quite the same thing, because he's not, you know, they don't remain genitally locked until the eggs are fertilized. But just for a time period, it gives him a head start, his sperm a head start, okay? That makes sense? You've seen probably this sort of thing happen in fox. Happens in fox, happens in the canis. This is along the same lines. These are a squirrel called the Formosan squirrel, which is really pretty looking squirrel, honestly. So the Formosan squirrel produces an alarm call. Okay. Produces an alarm call when it sees whatever their predators are, probably hawks, but it could maybe it's you know, dogs or cats or something like that. And when they hear this alarm call, okay, they everybody around freezes in place. And this is the time that they spend immobile. So if you play that alarm call for 3 minutes, everybody stays immobile for 3 minutes. 5 minutes they stay immobile for 5 minutes. 10 minutes they stay immobile for like 12 minutes. Okay, so it's something that just stops all squirrel activity. Okay, and it makes sense. I mean, if there's a predator around and somebody makes an alarm call, you stop activity because you stop them being susceptible or gaining the notice of the predator. Okay. Male Formosan squirrels, after they mate, they also produce what's called a post-copulatory call. Okay. It sounds to everybody just like an alarm call. Okay. You can look at the sonograms of the alarm calls and post-copulatory calls, and they're exactly identical. And the squirrels treat them identically as well. You know, same thing. 3 minutes of copulatory call, they remain immobile. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, golden, something. Okay. The males are producing these post-copulatory calls to basically make it impossible for any other males to come in and mate with this female. So he's guarding, sort of guarding. He's doing things that reduce the probability of other males mating with the female that he just mated with. Okay? Same sort of thing, though. It's like genital locking in dogs, but it's post-copulatory calls in hormones and squirrels. Does that make some sense?
This stuff actually happens.
What?
It's so like intriguing. Like these animals are so smart sometimes.
It's not, you don't have to be smart. It's just that if an organism can, you know, it'll give, it gives alarm calls. Okay? But now, someone gave an alarm. There's a genetic sort of tendency to give an alarm call for after copulation for whatever reason, and that would spread dramatically through a population because it prevents other males from mating with this female. I would like to actually know more about this, but I don't know. Because what does the male who just mated do? He knows himself. Predator. Maybe he, I don't know. There's a whole lot of things he could do. Let's skip this one and go on to this one. Okay. Guardian females can take a variety of different forms, and it doesn't have, it kind of at some point verges out of guarding. Let's take a look at this video.
Other male insects offer other enticements to their females. Hanging flies in North America. They are hunters. Flies are their favorite food if they can get them. But beetles may have to do. This male has caught a fly, but he doesn't eat it all. He uses it as a bait for a female. To advertise it, he fans his wings and disperses a perfume released from the tip of his abdomen. A female approaches. Had this been a small fly or a beetle, she wouldn't have stayed. But she approves of this large, juicy one, and as she feasts on it, she allows the male to mate. But he won't let go of his gift. Transferring sperm for a hanging fly is a lengthy business, and it may take him 20 minutes to complete it. He grips her securely while she continues to feed. Mating completed, he releases her. She wants to take the remains of the fly with her, but he wants to keep it, and a wrestling match starts. He wins. Even a second-hand meal may attract another female. And within a minute or so, another female is interested.
So, these are often called nuptial gifts. A lot of insects, a lot of things do this. Provide a resource to the female. Now, one of the things that it might do is actually benefit the female, and certainly she seems to think that it does because she's, attracted by and eating this thing. It also benefits the male because, of course, he attracts the female, but also because he can monopolize her activity for a long enough time that he can transfer her sperm and maybe actually succeed in, fertilizing more of her eggs. This is a scorpion fly, which are not flies at all, just another group of insects. And they also provide these nuptial gifts, and we'll see a lot of things that actually do that. But here's the body size of that nuptial prey that these scorpion flies provide. and this is the duration of the copulation. So, little prey items result in a small amount of time that the male can copulate with the female, and basically about 20 units. So this is, you get the maximum duration of copulation, and that's probably at the time when the male has transferred all the sperm. It just doesn't go. So, in this case, is it guarding of the females? Kinda. Is it providing a resource for the females? Kinda. So there's some parts of both of this. The sort of extreme is in redback spiders, and this probably has nothing to do with providing food for the female.
A male redback spider found the female's lair. But will he be recognized as a potential suitor? Or will this female see him as her next meal? His footsteps vibrate the web, sending all the right signals. She gets the message and stays still. Tentatively, he maneuvers into place. One false move, and he could be dead. His palps, resembling tiny boxing gloves, are packed with sperm. He drums them against her as the prelude to an extraordinary sexual act. He's in, and the sperm transfer begins. But at this climactic moment, he makes a bizarre move. He flips his body over into her jaws. He forfeits his own life, all for the sake of sex. But there's method in his madness. While she's busy eating, he's still pumping. And more sperm means more of his babies. For his genes, it makes perfect sense. He has to die sometime, and by trading in his life early, he's ensuring a bigger stake in the next generation.
In fact, he's not only he has to die sometime, he's likely to die pretty much next, regardless of whether he does this. The male, you saw how big the males were compared to the females? They're tiny. And the females are not really that common, so they're widely distributed, like they might be, tens of meters, hundreds of meters apart. So the chance that a male is going to find a second female to mate with is like 0. So the best thing that he can do at that point is to prolong the copulation, increase the number of sperm that are transferred. Honestly, relative to his body size, he's probably not doing much to, increase the number of eggs that the female can produce, since she's gigantic. I mean, he's not much of a snack, basically. But he is actually monopolizing that female's activities while he actually continues to copulate. Okay.
What's the name of that spider?
Well, it's the redback spider. It's actually kind of a distant relative of black widow. But so there's a lot of, not a lot, but you probably heard of praying mantis eating their male partners. It's the same sort of thing going on. The males are actually being consumed, but while they're doing that, they're still transferring. Makes sense? So honeybees do this sort of thing as well. Not quite the same thing. The female doesn't eat males, but the males, when they mate with the queen, who's up in the air, among males, though, for access to females. It's just extended to a far greater extent, I suppose. Okay?
It's,
Somebody see it?
yeah, it's on the corner of the desk.
Thank you. Now, you know, we want to kind of go on away from males and talk about females. And if we kind of like return to this figure, I mean, as sort of a kind of guidance thing. I mean, we sort of imagine that, you know, this is the distribution of mates by males and females, distribution of number of, I mean, not mates, but number of offspring, males and females. And the easiest thing for us to think about for males usually that have this greater variance in reproductive success, to get to be those individuals that have the highest reproductive success, is to increase the number of mates that they have. Or, not in the case of redback spiders, but the number of sperm that they produce to provide for the female. And that's essentially very competitive. That because if a male can monopolize more females, that means that other males have less of a success, less of a chance of success at for females, it's actually obviously advantageous for them to increase their reproductive success as well. If they're not able to monopolize greater numbers of males, which is in some case, you know, maybe not possible for them to increase their reproductive success by mating with more males. And there are other things that they certainly are able to do, such as increase the survival of their young, or increase maybe the quality somehow of their young. These are not necessarily sort of competitive actions that take place between females. So a female that might increase the survival of her young, maybe she's a better parent or provides more food, that doesn't necessarily reduce the number of offspring that some other female has. So there's no sort of a female-female competition involved in that. A female that can increase the quality of her young doesn't necessarily cause the quality of some other female's young to go down. So that's not competitive as well. Okay. So, but there's certainly ways to do this. Now, males, you know, are probably also interested in increasing the survival of their young, or increasing the quality of their young. But it's just a simpler thing to do to increase the number of mates than to engage in increased survival and increased quality. Try to improve the quality of the young. Now, one of the ways that we're going to talk about this, increase maybe the number of their offspring and the survival of their offspring. And one of the ways that they can do that is by acquiring more resources to produce young and ensure their survival. This is, we're going to see this cricket, wart piper cricket. Here we got a male. Female cricket is this one, because she's got has an ovipositor. The male cricket is copulating with her. He's producing this thing here, which is called a spermatophylax. But it's essentially, it's kind of a nuptial gift, but it's one that he produces. This is a substance that, and there's transferred from the male to the female. And this is a substance that it has a lot of nutritional goodies, fats, lipid fats, and proteins, and so on in it, that the female then can consume. Okay. These are things that happen in a lot of insects. Generically, they're called spermatophores. I don't know, just use sperm body or something like that. In crickets and grasshoppers and katydids, it has a special name, spermat. Nobody needs to know those terms, but that's what it's called. It's spermatophylax. It's that thing that might actually be, a decent fraction of the male's body weight. Doesn't contain sperm. It's just a nutritional substance that's provided to the female. Here's kind of what happens, or can happen as a consequence of those, those transfers of spermatophylax.
If it's not sperm, then why did you call it a copulation?
Well, it was a copulation.
But not of any
There's a copulation going on side by side with the transfer and production of the spermatophylax. So he was mating with her, and he was also producing the spermatophylax.
Oh.
Yeah. And the so this is an experiment where they had a cricket species that was fed different numbers of spermatophylaces, and they are fed different types. Okay. And then they're looking at the number of eggs they lay and the weight of those eggs. Okay. Now, does that make sense? Okay. So, number of eggs. One thing that always matters is the size of the female. In insects, the bigger the female, the more the eggs they lay. Okay, so that's cool, and that's important to take into account because you're really interested in these other traits. So there are things that the females can eat, their diet, which increases the number of eggs that they produce. So that has a big effect. Here is the diet. But also the number of basically spermatophylaces that they eat, which is basically only obtained during copulation, and so it's the number of times they copulate. That also increases their reproductive output, the number of eggs. Okay? Does that make sense? Those are goodies that the female is getting from the male that she's mating with. Okay? So something that the male is producing that increases the reproductive success of the female they mate with.
Isn't he giving it to her as a RPA already exists, so how is it gonna?
It keeps going. She might be able to store this for her.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's a really interesting question. The other thing it happens is it changes the weight of the eggs that she produces. Very commonly, bigger eggs mean bigger offspring, if you're an insect, and therefore greater chance of survival. So this is also increasing the weight of the egg. It's pretty much the only thing that's increasing the actual mass of the eggs themselves. So number n, so more of them that are more likely to survive if female gets more resources from the males that she mates with. So this is very different from, the male benefit from mating more than once. This is the female benefit by that they're gaining in terms of their reproductive success from males. That make sense? Lightning bugs also produce a spermatophore. Because we're out of crickets, they're not called spermatophylax. They produce a spermatophore. Okay. And they track the females that they mate with by these flashes that make them fireflies. They flash, and those are attractive females. There are males that produce a variety of flash durations. Okay, 60 up to 120 milliseconds. But this experiment here is kind of only involved in the 60 to 80 or 90 range of flash durations. Okay. It turns out that females prefer males who have a longer flash duration. Female positive, extent of their positive responses to males that produce flashes of different durations goes up. Telling us that the highest tested one is up here, high 80s. So the females prefer males that produce longer flash durations. And also, the flash duration correlates with the size of the spermatophore that the male is making. So the females are choosing to mate with males that have longer flash durations, but that longer flash duration correlates with the sort of direct benefit that the females get by mating with the male. So they're getting a direct benefit by mating with particular males. So they're choosing on the basis of a sort of a goodie that they're getting from males. Make sense? It's actually sort of straightforward to understand the direct benefits here, I think. But if you're thinking back to that difference in the curves where the male reproductive success and female distribution of reproductive success are different. Females are getting higher reproductive success by things that they're doing. It's in this case, they're getting more resources to produce more offspring. These are bullfrogs. You know bullfrogs? These guys. Actually, there's more than one. Some of them have a heritage trait than others. The females prefer, far and away, to mate with males that have deeper croaks. Deeper croak males are invariably larger males. So they may be choosing to mate with larger males, but not because they're sensing the size in any way other than through the sound that they're producing. So the deeper the croak, the larger the male. Okay. This is the size of the male. Snout to ischium, which is kind of like to the back of that sort of frog. Okay. The bigger the males, the lower the mortality of the embryos that result in the eggs that the female lays in those males' territories. So in bullfrogs, what happens is you have a bunch of males who are calling in different places throughout a pond, okay? And females come in, mate with those males, deposit eggs there, okay? Depending upon where the female has deposited those eggs, her eggs will survive more than others. Okay, some of them will have a high degree of embryo mortality. Some of them will have much lower embryo mortality. Okay? And it turns out to correlate with the size of the male. Bigger males have lower embryo mortality. It's not anything that the males do. They have no contribution to parental care. They don't take care of the young at all. What happens is that the biggest males occupy the best territories in those lakes and ponds. If it's an extremely open piece of water that a male has chosen, the eggs will, they start out as kind of a clump, but then they go as a sort of a single layer of eggs. Okay, and when that happens, basically leeches from below the water can come up and just suck all those eggs right to a high amount of embryo mortality. if the males choose areas that have a really high density of vegetation, then those eggs just stay, really tight clumps. And when that happens, leeches can get some of the ones on the outside. But what happens is the eggs don't heat up very fast. It takes them a long time to mature, and they develop fungal infections. They're attacked by fungi. That's not good either. They have high embryo mortality. If they're in a kind of the just right, Goldilocks zone, of the right amount of aquatic vegetation, they'll spread out a little bit, and it heats up enough so that they develop quickly and they're not so subject to fungal infection, and it protects a certain fraction of them from attack by leeches, and they have the lowest mortality. And that's where the big bullfrogs go. Okay, they go into those areas that are very suitable for the development of bullfrog embryos. Does that make some sense? So, hopefully, this is reminding people of a variety of things. So this is just like, wow, it's the same thing as, the fireflies. Instead of the females choosing to mate with males that have a longer flash duration, because they're going to get a bigger spermatozoa, they're choosing to mate with males that have the deepest croaks, because they're going to occupy the places that have, the correct mixture of aquatic vegetation in them. And I hope some people are thinking back to the ideal despotic distribution that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where, the best individual is occupying the best territory. Worst individuals occupying the worst territory. Okay? And as a consequence, what makes it the best or the worst is, well, it depends on the species you're talking about. But in the case of bullfrogs, the appropriate amount of aquatic vegetation, and they get the highest reproductive success. Yeah, so this is just a measure of body size. It's just that you can't measure, you don't stretch out how do you measure the size of the frog? Measure the snout issue. Females are gaining, direct benefits in some cases by mating with particular males. Okay? They get more food. Maybe they get a better place to live. Maybe they'll get better animal care. It increases, the male is providing something that directly increases her reproductive success. By mechanisms easy to understand. She just gets more food. She gets a safer place. Her babies get a safer place. Okay, things that have a direct benefit on the number of offspring produced. And then there's these sorts of things. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about this kind of mating situation. Here we've got, peacocks. Peacocks have these extravagant tails, right? The bigger the tail, well, the more likely the male and females to mate with it. Whether or not is that something? That's not a spermatophylax, or it's not a territory quality. These guys don't engage in any parental care whatever. Okay. Why would a female want to mate with a male with long tail? These are stock-eyed flies. You seen stock-eyed flies before? So there's a fly, and these are the eyes. That one here, and one out here. They're on these long stalks, hence the name. Okay, this doesn't seem optimal in terms of how you would actually design a fly. And the males here are competing with one another to see who has the longest stalk. Okay, and the female will mate with the male that has the longer eye span. Okay. So again, there's no direct benefit that those females seem to be getting here. Turkeys and their sort of elaborate sort of calls and so on. Male birds, some of them that have very long tails. This is a bird of paradise. This is the female. This is the male during his display. Okay, a horseshoe hammerhead bat, which has this sort of huge nose, which is partly used to produce very, very loud vocalizations that attract females from female mates. The bat that has the biggest, loudest voice is the biggest nose. Orangutans, they're males with flames and so on. What's going on here? How do we think about the advantages that females might get from mating with a male that has super long flanges or a male with super long eye stalks? That's going to be probably what we'll spend the next, I'll take out this card right there because we'll start next time talking about this one. I have more